Hi guys, welcome back. I'm Delilah from Thrive Educational Services and I've got your weekly reading tip today. Now this week's tip is probably going to be one that many people are not going to like, but I want to share it anyway because it's just so important and the effects are just becoming such a problem nowadays that I really want to address this right now. So the tip is to limit screen time. Now I know that a lot of parents are going to disagree with or not going to like hearing that they need to limit their child's screen time. And I understand why, but let me explain why I'm recommending that. So in the last year, there have been many studies that have come out that have linked lots of negative things towards the amount of screen time that children have on a daily basis. I posted a lot of them to the Facebook page so you can scroll back and see. But the latest research is showing that the more children are exposed to screen time, the lower they score on thinking, memory, and language tests. And there are several reasons for this. They don't really know everything, but there's been quite a few studies that have come out in the last couple of years that are basically reaching the same conclusions. They're seeing the same patterns over and over every time they study the effect of screens on children's brains and their development. There's definitely a limit to where it's okay and it's safe and nothing's happening, and then there's too much and you start to see those negative effects. So I want to share what the current recommended amount of screen time is for each age group, and I'm going to share this from the American Academy of Pediatrics. So it used to be about 2 hours a day, and they've kind of scrapped that recently. So right now, 18 months or younger, they should not have any screen time at all. For 18 months to 2 years, it should be one time and not used alone. So they shouldn't be handed a device to just sit there and look at. It should be something that you do with an adult or with another person. And I'll explain that in a minute. For 2 to 5 years, it should be 1 hour a day. And at this point, they can use it on their own. And for 6 or older, it says to place consistent limits on the time spent on and types of media. Don't let it affect sleep, exercise, and other behaviors. So the reason that they've had to change this is because the other thing that they have found is that screen time, and it may not be the actual screen, it may just be the behavior. When a lot of young kids, especially toddlers and preschoolers, are handed a device usually so they can entertain themselves in a situation where they would otherwise be a little bit crazy, or when the parents need to do something, which I totally understand. However, that should definitely be limited because that is replacing social engagement that the child would otherwise be getting. So they're using that screen on their own and they are missing out on social engagement with other people, which affects their language development, their verbal expression, their vocabulary skills, and in the end, that all is connected to reading. So all that is hindering their language development, basically in different areas, not just one area. And it's super critical at that age, basically, toddlers to preschoolers, where that's where they're really starting to be exposed to letters and speech sounds and social cues and social engagement. So they're really missing out on a lot of that stuff that we used to have. When we were kids, we didn't have screens to entertain us like that, so we didn't miss out on those things. So these kids nowadays are kind of growing up in a time that's completely different. And we really don't know what the long-term effects are going to be, but we know right now they have seen that it definitely negatively affects their language development along with other things. So that's the second reason that I would say to definitely avoid it, especially for the younger kids. If you're going to use screens, remember to use it with your child. Make sure that you're engaging with them as they use the screen and make it kind of like a family activity. And then you're not having such a negative impact. The other thing that this came out a couple of years ago. It really didn't get too much media attention, but there was one study that came out that showed how it's very addicting, and it's not so much the screen as it is the apps. And this is why I don't really believe in educational apps. A lot of parents justify giving their kids the tablets so they can say, oh, they're doing something educational. But you can give them toys with letters, toys with numbers, puzzles, Legos. That stuff is going to have a much more positive educational impact than an educational app because they design these apps on purpose to be addicting for your children, which I think should be totally legal. But they make them addicting so your kid continues to play and then they want to buy add-ons or they want to buy whatever they have the ads. If you have like a free version, they're trying to sell a product and they know that they need to get the customer to keep coming back. So unfortunately, educational apps are really, you don't need them. Kids are not better off with them at all. And then you have the impact of that screen where in the app or in the games that they're playing, they're basically getting constant instant gratification, which is something that little kids shouldn't be experiencing because that time period, they're basically developing that skill of waiting for things to happen and trying to problem solve and figure things out on their own. So in the case with games and activities on screens, and this includes TV, they're constantly getting those images and they don't have to do anything other than maybe touch the screen. That's all they have to do. And the second they touch it, something happens. So it's that constant instant gratification. Okay, they're getting flashy images. They don't have to think really much. It's all given to them. It's a very passive experience. And that passive experience doesn't develop their creativity, their imagination, their social skills, problem solving, maybe a little bit with some games. But they definitely get a lot more out of using toys that have the same kind of content, because it's not the content that's the problem. Yeah, these apps teach them things. Sure, they teach them letters and they teach them numbers, but at the expense of other things. So I think that a lot of kids might be better off playing games and doing things that would develop those same skills off of the screen. So definitely think about the amount of screen time your child is having, and remember that includes television, computer, tablet, cell phone, video games, anything like that that has a screen. Figure out if there's any areas or times of day that you can eliminate it. Like an easy one would be to make sure there's no screens during meal times, because it's easy to keep them engaged by talking to them when you're having meals. So that's an easy one. Even at restaurants, think about what we had to do back in the day. We couldn't just get our parents' cell phones or have a tablet to keep us engaged. We had to figure it out. We had to color something, play a tic-tac-toe game, or just sit there and be bored and figure it out. That's really good for kids' brains. It's really good for them to be bored and figure out what to do to entertain themselves. That's a skill that they all need to develop. And in my experience, a lot of kids are missing out on that. I see it a lot in the classroom. They're never bored. They always have something. And so when there's nothing, they don't know what to do with themselves. So think about that. Think about where you can cut down on screen time. Keep it sensible. I know life is busy. I'm a working mom. I completely understand. Maybe you can do more screen time on the weekends, less screen time during the week, kind of balance it out a little bit, but definitely consider it because it is definitely a problem. And I'm going to link a couple of different studies in the comments so that you can have a look at the ones that I was talking about earlier and help you make your decisions. And I'll be back next week with a brand new reading tip. See you then.